Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. The midterm elections are over. Democrats in the majority in the House, Republicans in the Senate. Jeff Sessions is out. Still no decision in the Georgia governor's race, and for that matter, in Florida and Arizona, too. Too close to call in Virginia beach council races. Virginia sends 7 Democrats out of 11 representatives to Washington, and yet another mass shooting in our country. Whew. What a week. The Another View Roundtable has something to say about it all. Allison Moore, Alvean Lyons, Pretlow, and Daun Hester are here with insight and wisdom. Stay tuned for the Another View Roundtable. It's coming up next.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. The Another View Roundtable is in the house, and they are wound up and ready to go. But before I introduce them, a couple of things of interest to the community I think you might want to know about. The concerned citizens from Newport News are trying to rebuild the old Huntington Middle School. Huntington was one of the first high school buildings in the city of Newport News, built in 1924. Organizers of the Move to Rebuild will hold a candlelight vigil on November the 10th from 4 p.m. until 5:33 at 3401 Orcutt Avenue in Newport News. For more information, if you're familiar with the school in that area, call James Lovett Jr. at 757-771-2249. That's 757-771-2249. And attention all artists, tomorrow is meaning Saturday the 10th, is the deadline if you'd like to enter Norfolk State University's graphic novel competition. The contest is focusing on the arrival of the first Africans to Virginia in 1619, and artists are being asked to use their talents to tell that story through art. Now, this is just one aspect of the larger graphic novel conference that will take place at NSU Student Center on Sunday, November the 18th from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. And during that conference, graphic artists will hear from and get to show their work to some of the best artists in the industry. If you want to know more, contact Brian Tillman at btillman@nsu.edu. So that's for all you graphic artists out there. And finally, I hope to see you in the place. The Girl Scouts of the Colonial Coast on November the 29th, holding their Girl Scout Famous Formers Luncheon. I happen to be a famous former, and I will serve as the MC for this event. It's going to be at the Hilton, Norfolk at the Main, and proceeds will support the delivery of Girl Scout leadership experiences to nearly 12,000 girls served by the Girl Scouts of the Colonial Coast. This year's honorees are Stephanie Adams from Old Dominion University, Kim Curtis with Tidewater Home Funding, Michelle Farabee, NASA Langley Research Center, Daun Hester, from Another View, our roundtable in the city of Norfolk, Vicki Kern, Princeton University Press, Lisa Schultz, U.S. Coast Guard, and Charity Volman, SunTrust Bank. If you'd like to know more, go to their website, which is gsccc.org. So those are all the public affairs announcements for today. So I don't know about you, but I had butterflies in my stomach watching the election returns this week. The butterflies died down, but mixed emotions about some of the outcomes. The Another View Roundtable is here with their take on what happened. First, she's known as Virginia's relationship expert and is a co-host on the popular podcast Love Life. Alvean Lyons joins us. Hey, Alvean, how you doing?
Hi, everybody.
So glad to have you back. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to think.
I'm excited.
Our famous former Girl Scout and Norfolk City Treasurer, Daun Hester. Hey, Daun, how are you?
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And Miss Carol Pretlow joins us from Norfolk State University, where she's a professor of political science, but more importantly, she is the birthday girl today. Happy birthday, Carol.
Thank you. I'm 73 years young.
There you go. All right. That's fantastic. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
You.
And I thought she was a millennial, but she informed me today that she is a grown woman.
Well, she has something else in there.
Black.
And she is a grown black woman. As a matter of fact, her name is Allison Moore, and she is a comedian. And Allison, we are so happy you're back with us.
I'm glad to be back.
Absolutely. We missed you last time around. So, Dawn, I got to ask you a question because you have run for office on many, many occasions. This whole idea of all these races that are not complete, from the candidate's perspective, what do you think they're thinking at this point? People like Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams and so many others who are still trying to figure out if, in fact, they won.
They are anxious, nervous, and excited. Because when you get to the point where the count is so close that you have to make sure that every vote is counted, they're like, what steps do we take next? What do we have to do? How do we plan to block this if we need to? You know, Stacey's already filed in court. And those things you have to put in place because you can always draw them back if necessary. But what it has demonstrated to them is that they got people out to vote. And because it's so close, it can't be called. And that's not just even in those that we were watching. There are 11 other cases that are still out there.
Absolutely.
Campaigns that are still out there that people are still waiting
for Senate in Arizona. And that switched because the Republican candidate was up first, and now it's turned towards the Democrat, and it keeps kind of going back and forth. President Trump said this morning that states are finding votes, quote unquote.
Well, you document everything, so we know that it's documented. We, and we dismiss what he says, because it was probably a lie. And so, but he's going to do anything that he can to throw off people, but you can't change the numbers. If people want to vote, you're going to find that ballot one way or another. So you either stood in line, you either did it earlier, or you did it absentee. And it just takes time to count all those votes. We might not know for a month.
Wow. That's a long time for that indecision.
But
I guess people...
But that means how many votes do you have to count?
Yeah, which means that people really did turn out.
We turned out. When I got my line, I was happy.
Yeah, I know. And what was your experience, Alvean, when you went to vote?
There was such joy for me personally, even though locally, admittedly, we weren't doing something historic locally. But to know that in some way you're sort of like a pebble dropped inside of the ocean, and that ripple is really touching every shore, that thing, I felt different about it. And every year I take a picture with my husband, not just because he's fine, y'all, but I have to let people know that real serious folks actually vote. Okay, it's cute, it's sexy, it's beautiful to vote, participate in the process. So I post it every single year when we take that picture. But there's something about knowing that history was being made places, that, and admittedly, it's crazy that in 2018, we're still talking about the first black anything, okay, or the first female anything in our country, but it is what it is. But just to know that we're finally at a place that we had more women run for office this year than ever. Like, we're changing some
and
things.
To get elected.
And to win.
First
Muslim on top of
Absolutely.
that, too, winning. Like, I mean, it's just America, for all of the things that are going on, for all of the angst that many of us may be feeling for lots of reasons we will probably be discussing in this conversation. There are some beautiful things that are happening because change does not take place until people get uncomfortable. And what I am grateful for is that for the president's leadership on discomfort. He has effectively led us to a point of discomfort that folks who are vacillating about what it was that they should do, could do, or would do have gotten off of that couch to actually do it.
Carol, from your perspective as a political scientist, what do you...
Gosh, I can't tell you how proud I was. But I was... Well, first the pride part, because I looked at the number of my students who were going to the polls. Now, I showed up around 9 o'clock and I was like, okay, boring. It's nobody here. And I was beginning to get nervous, and I don't text. So I had to wait and go to the mall. And then one by one, my students were coming by with their little stickers, and it just reminded me of being back in the 60s and how excited I was and everything. So it was phenomenal. But more exciting than that, they were able to discuss issues that concern them. And I was like, this is not just me showing up as a body, but I know the issue that I'm concerned with, and that made me proud.
Allison, from your perspective as a young person, as the youngest one on the panel, as a young grown woman, as a young grown woman, absolutely. What did you think overall?
I think that I have to agree that this is a place where, for me, I can't pretend or ignore it. It's like, okay, let me pay attention. It's like, oh, wait, everybody talking about this. It's on the Breakfast Club. So it's like, oh, okay, wait, no, we serious now. Okay, wait. So it does pull, I feel like there is a group of young grown folks that are like, we can't act like that our vote doesn't matter, that we can just pretend and be quiet and hide and not be accountable. This is a place where you got to grow up, I don't want to be the one that's missing.
Yeah, you don't want that to be passing. Absolutely. Well, now Virginia sent 7 Democrats and 4 Republicans to the House of Representatives, and also a senator from the Democratic Party. It was a gain of 3 for Democrats, and one of the major races was between Elaine Luria and Scott Taylor. Were you surprised, anybody, at the outcome of that race, Dawn?
I was excited. I was surprised, but I wasn't, because they worked so hard. Folks knocked on doors. They made those calls. The GOTV effort was magnificent. We now got 2 people of color on the council in Virginia Beach. They got the wave of that effort. I'm excited for Elaine. I'm excited for the families in Virginia Beach. They now have dual representation. They have Republican and Democrat. And so that will help in building the coalition that I think is needed to help bring even Virginia Beach together and a part of bringing the country together. So, but I was excited. It was close, and I knew Scott and had worked with Scott, and, but I'm just excited that Virginia Beach now has an opportunity to demonstrate. Well, they demonstrated it.
Yeah, because they have a whole new council and a whole new and a new mayor, and
they still count votes too now.
Well, that's true. That's true, because for the at-large seats, am I correct in that? I believe. Right. Yeah, so they're still counting votes. So it's just unusual. It feels like it's unusual to me, this late counting of votes.
It is.
I know it's happened in the past, but it seems like it's a lot.
But
lately.
Florida's always, we've been able to count on Florida for something interesting.
Well, that's true. I mean, I remember the hanging chads.
Okay. Always. Right. So I find it interesting that we're back here again. We're back talking about Florida again. And it's not to say that there aren't other areas that it's happening. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that Florida, we've always been able to count. If there was going to be some excitement somewhere, it was going to be in Florida. And here it is again. They never disappoint. So we're back there. But watching what's happening really speaks to, and we referenced it previously, the fact that people were so engaged and were voting in every way they could possibly vote, and that there's so many people who are represented in this. And I consider voting a conversation. It's a conversation with individuals and their nation. Here is where I sit on these issues, and I'm not heard any other time the way that I'm heard when I cast this ballot. So people wanted to be part of the nation's conversation in a way that we just haven't seen before. Midterm elections hit unprecedented levels of engagement. Voter turnout, unprecedented levels of engagement. So we know that there's something that's happening in the zeitgeist of America that is unequivocally being stimulated by the leadership and the things that are happening, but all politics is local. So whatever's going on at a national level, you are going to see how important it is based on local response. So being able to see that locally across the nation, people were serious about this thing tells you that politics is just not something that we watch. It's not just something that we argue about over a dinner table, but it's something that people now feel like they live, and they can feel what happens when your leadership changes directions, whatever direction that may be. But when your leadership changes directions, the culture of the country shifts also. And that's being felt at a very real level.
Something to that point, though, because some pundits and others who study the patterns of voting and so forth are saying that we're currently in a cold civil war. And I want to read something.
heard
I want to read this to you from an article with Vox. It says the best way to think about this identity divide in the political conflict between two camps with fundamentally different versions of what this country is, with little room for compromise. It's kind of a cold civil war fought not with bullets but bitter and zero-sum political contests. Increasingly, Republicans and Democrats see themselves as part of cultural groups that are fundamentally distinct. They consume different media, they attend different churches, they live in distinct kinds of places, and rarely interact with people who disagree with them. So being a Republican or a Democrat isn't just a political affiliation, it's a catch-all identity that stands in for all these distinct identities, a master category viewed by race, defined by views on race and multiculturalism that has come to encompass all kinds of other groupings. So this whole idea of being, because the shift now became between rural and urban, and a lot of suburban people, women, in particular white women, wound up moving more towards the Democratic side as the rural areas dug in even more in terms of being conservative, voting for, as the president says, if you voted for a Republican, you voted for him. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that, Carol.
I'm very curious about the statement of our president, and I don't take his assessments literally, because he also last night talked about how African Americans were all supporting him, or for the majority were supporting him. I'm from a small town, and when I go there, I see diversity. I see some people who are very, very, very conservative. But more than that, this last time I saw some who said, well, I'm independent. And that gave me hope, because I said, at least that shows, okay, I'm going to listen to both sides before coming up with an opinion. So I don't think it's, one side or the other now. I think it's
Bernie Sanders was another one who came out to say that in Florida, part of the reason that Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams, for that matter, in Georgia, that is because there was a problem in those two states in particular of white people being used to voting for an African American. What do you think, Dawn?
Well, they're not used to voting for black people, especially at a state level. And your local levels, yes. But at the state level, that isn't something that they've had the opportunity to do, because nobody had ever elevated to that level, which is a great part of the movement in making this change and creating this change. We still have to go back, though, to gerrymandered districts, which are going to have to be looked at. And in 2020, with now having more states led by Democrats, where we will get some better lines drawn. Those things will still again be challenged, and will end up where? In the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So we've got to think about all those things, and still try to work together at the local level so that does not happen. But that's what's coming. And then suppressing the vote. Suppressing the vote is a big thing in the Georgia issue. Now, that's going to be big.
Yeah, because it still is mind-boggling to me that the person who was in charge of the vote was allowed to stay in office while he was running for office.
No conflict of interest.
But
Of course
still,
not. Absolutely not.
when you've been in the game long enough, the rules are written as the game is played. So the rules are not written so that you know how to play the game. The rules are written by those in control so they can control the outcome of the game. And that is exactly what he did. So there was no law that said that he had to step down. Okay? So even in Norfolk, when I ran for mayor that time, or when I was challenged as a council person, there were no rules that said that the other person had to step down. So when he ran and he lost, then we still sat at the table together. The rules changed after that. When I ran for mayor, then I had to step down in order to do that.
So they change as the circumstance
They change
happens.
the rules as they see things happening to still maintain control.
So what do you think they may do in Florida or Arizona or Georgia, for that matter, in terms of because they're having such issues with the count and with making sure that all the votes are counted?
We have to make sure Stacey has enough money to stay in court as long as she needs to stay in court to be able to challenge it all. Andrew's going to have to figure out which way he's going to go. I think he'll just start with the recount because it's so close. There's going to be an automatic recount.
Right.
So it's a different with the Chads because it should be faster. So then he'll have to decide. But with for me in Georgia, I'm just hoping that he gets below the 50%. Which means you got to have the runoff anyway.
And you have to have the runoff.
Runoff
right.
automatically. So, with states having all these different rules, then you got to keep up with all that.
Allison, do you think that because Stacey Abrams also had people such as Oprah Winfrey and the President Obama and all these other big names come out in support, is that a draw for younger voters? Does that make a difference, do you think?
I don't know if it's the age that it impacts, but just those who are influenced by those particular personalities. But I think it does make a difference if I'm 30 or 50, but I love Oprah Winfrey and I trust what she says and I'm watching her support this or this candidate, then I'm going, especially if I'm in this place where, like I'm at, where I'm learning, like, okay, for real, this shit, seriously, I'm serious. I'm 35 now. I need to figure this out. What y'all talking about? What is concede? Hold on. Let me research it. Oh, that's who they support? And I'm going to go with her this year while I'm catching up. So I do think that people of influence affect someone else's decision.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, there's an avid listener of ours. His name is Paul Butler, and he's out of Virginia Beach. And he talked about his frustration. He's not 35. But he talked about his frustration with the lack of people coming to the polls who really didn't know anything about the people they were voting for. In other words, they weren't sure what party they were in or what they stood for, or they just knew they were told they had to go vote. And so, do you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So what do we do about the education piece of this? Because it's everybody has the right to vote, but isn't there also a personal responsibility to actually kind of
know what you're voting for? Right.
Well,
let's start with Carol first, since you're the educator.
As a professor, what I do is I show them the Constitution, the state and the federal Constitution, and say, here is what we're dealing with. Here's the rules of the game. Now it's like a game of chess. And I designate who the chess pieces are. Now, you tell me what are the primary issues and how we're going to move it on this board to gain power. But I also believe that one of the things that most affects us, particularly academically, is we so stuck on that textbook. I wasn't going to say the word. We're stuck on the textbook, and we were like, on page this, and this. I'm like, no. That's a guide, but you got to think through this and apply these rules to a particular situation here. And I do the same thing when I'm teaching them, looking at Congress and what bills are before Congress every week. Tell me how it plays out. Yeah.
And then, too, a lot of times it's what has impacted my life.
Okay.
That's sometimes how we decide who we're going to vote for. Because in Virginia, it doesn't have the D and the R on there. So,
right, exactly. You don't know who.
You can't just say go vote for the Democrat.
Right.
You got to say who they are. And then you got to ask what district they're in. And then sometimes they don't know what district they're in. So you got to look it up for them and then be able to tell them who to vote for. But oftentimes it is, who is it that has a passion about what is impacting my life or my family or my work. And that's where, people will decide to go.
Carol?
And for me, even when I'm teaching them how to analyze this, and they say, well, I support this candidate. I say, okay, if you're planning a strategy for the opposite team, what would your counterattack be? Because you have to know how the opposite side is going to play things out in order to solidify your candidate. So I think it's teaching the rules of the game, as only you who have practiced it know, but teaching people how to think through.
Alvean, but in real life, do we have time for that? Or I mean, because you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about all of the commercials. If you watched any television or listened to any radio for the last over the past week before the election. Say just in that time frame, or just in the night before. I mean, there was not a commercial break where either somebody was screaming at you about the alien invasion, or
That mysteriously is now not in the media.
Yes.
Might I add?
or it was someone saying, about how, look into my eyes and I'll tell you what kind of person I'm going to be. I mean, honestly, and if you don't know, and if you really haven't been following, I would imagine it could be pretty intimidating.
Well, what was interesting is when I don't know if this is at everybody's polls, but when I get to the polls all the time, there's always this lovely little sheet that looks just like what my ballot's going to look like, and it's already filled out. So for people who are non-thinkers, but you believe you want to vote Democratic, because typically it's a little blue sheet that they hand out to you. It looks identical to the ballot, and it shows you already, you're going to circle this, you're going to fill in this bubble, you're going to fill in this, and you're going to fill in this. So just take this with you, and you literally can take it with you inside, because it's just a piece of paper. You can take it inside, and you can copy the answers off the test. So you can do exactly what was told to you. So
the guide.
I must say that they are trying to make this like dummy proof when it comes to people who are uninformed, but know that they want to vote a particular way. So they have an idea that I want to vote blue or I want to vote red. Well, if I am tribal by nature, this is what my tribe is doing. So it's a very simple recipe. But what I would say we need to be very thoughtful about, I'm not encouraging this in terms of the standard. What I am saying is that what we need to be thoughtful about is making sure that we are communicating the language of the voter that we need. So there needs to be, almost like smart sheets, for instance, okay, for our millennial voters, all you need to know is that we're committed to reducing out-of-pocket expenses in terms of college. We're trying to ensure that we're going to keep you on your parents' health care until you're 26, and we're trying to ensure that you're going to be able to vote for whatever it may be, whatever the issue is. But we need to communicate at the level of the voter. What will potentially matter? And if I can do that quickly, then see, the thing that we have to remember generationally, it does not take that much money to reach millennials. All you need is an Instagram. If you have Instagram and Snapchat, that is where the education is taking place anyway. So most of the millennials I know were all following Sean King, who happens to be an activist. They all follow him. He's got, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of followers if he hasn't hit 1 million yet. And they just wanted to see what was Sean saying about the various issues. They all have their person.
Is that how you found it, Allison?
Not through Sean.
No, not necessarily through Sean, but my point is,
there is
using social media
or using someone that I follow. Yes, there is an element of the person that I'm influenced by, or I like how they respond to other issues and other things that I care about. Then I'm like, okay, well, what do they have to say about that? Especially when I'm coming into something that I feel like everyone already knows what they got going on. They've already been doing it for hundreds of years, and I understand the Paul frustration, because that's something that I would feel as a lesser informed voter who is college educated twice, so I don't have an excuse. I got almost grown kids. I should know better, but I've been able to just slide under the radar. It's just not what we talk about in my group chat.
Did we call you out?
You did. And I'm like, why can I have a fire this month? So I could not be here this month but I call my lawyer friends. I call them like, how do we feel about these women? I asked the question, but like, how do we feel about this conceited man? But yeah, there is some place of that, but like to Paul, because like I said, I feel the frustration. Like, well, you can't come out there and not know. I'm like, look, you have to pick a side. You want me to come, or you want me to? Right. I can't. I cannot take my thesis. Ways. Right. Give me a chance. Let me get there. And what I did for myself was when I went to the poll, I read the paper. I'm so proud. I read. Wait, you ready? You ready? Okay, listen. It was about something that happened with people with flooding.
Oh,
it was on. I read it, and they tried to rush me.
The second,
and I said, "Give me a minute."
Yep.
And I sat. I waited.
So you read the whole.
Yeah. I let 6 people pass me that hurt, because I let them go. I could have left. But I said go because I need to read. So I read about what happens to spouses and people with Virginia
Yeah.
Flip
Yes.
Act.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about current events from an African American perspective with the Another View Roundtable. Relationship expert Alvean Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, NSU Professor of Political Science Carol Pretlow, and comedian Allison Moore. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee, and you're listening to Another View. In Florida, back to Florida for just a second, they did vote to allow felons
Yes.
Yes,
to
they did.
vote.
Yes, they did.
What do you think about that? I see the happy dance going, Dawn.
I'm so happy.
Do you think that will catch on across the country?
Oh God, it'd be nice if we just caught on right here in Virginia.
Yeah, no,
Okay, we don't have that.
I know we don't have it
We don't
yet.
have it in Virginia yet.
Not yet. We're working on it.
We got to keep the blue wave going.
So,
Yeah.
I'm just, it just is what it is. Because, until you're able to control what gets on the ballot, a constitutional amendment, then the governor will have to keep doing it. It's still easier to do. So people who do have issues, they just need to file that piece of paper because it's easier to get your rights back to vote.
Mm-hmm.
But automatic is where we need to continue to work to get to in every state. But that's always going to be an issue.
I listened to a story on NPR this week where a pastor, who is a gentleman who is now a pastor, but had been incarcerated for several years on drug charges, and he did his time, paid his fines, did everything, and they were talking to him about what he thinks. They asked him had he already gone down to the registrar's office to register to vote, and he said, "Well, you have to wait until January." He said, "But our biggest fear right now is something is going to happen or change so that we can't do it." So like January is like the magic, time. And it was just really heartwarming just in terms of hearing how he was saying that this was just the way that he felt like a true citizen again, as opposed, even though he had done everything society had asked him to do to atone for his mistakes, that this was the icing on the cake.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say it is for many because it's heartwarming for them to come up and say, "Miss Hester, I got to vote for you for the first time."
Yeah.
But it gives you fulfillment as a person.
Yeah.
That now I can do all the things that citizens of this country are able to do.
Absolutely.
So it is empowering.
We greatly
Allison?
underestimate.
Alvean, excuse me.
I got you. It's the A's. It's the A's.
Yeah, it's the A's.
We greatly underestimate the psychological and emotional impact of inclusion, what it feels like to be included in something. Because to be a citizen of the United States, given we all could make horrible decisions under the right set of circumstances. Okay, so let's be mindful of that. We have a tendency to be so judgmental of others and to live on this moral high ground that I would never. But let somebody hurt your kid. And you see exactly how much you're willing to do. Let somebody lose your job and you can't feed your children what you're willing to do. The list goes on and on. We, under the right circumstances, all of us could become a very different human being. So we have to be careful about the decisions we make about others for their indiscretions or mistakes. That's the first thing I want to say. And once that happens, what you're doing in essence is it's like sitting in a room where you're watching people have a conversation inside of a glass box, and you can see it all, but you can't join the conversation. That's what it's like to be a felon, that I can see everything that's happening. I'm experiencing all of these things, but I'm not allowed inside of that conversation where everything that's going to impact my life out here is being decided. I'm not allowed to say anything. So when we restore those opportunities, what we're also adding, whether we realize it or not, is the sense of investment again in the same culture, in the same country, in the same nation. That for as long as I feel like I don't matter, you're reinforcing the likelihood of negative behavior because I'm not invested. But when you tell me that I own a piece of this again, then I have a greater investment in the quality of life I live as a person who is a part of the whole again. So inclusion changes how people feel about things psychologically, and the buy-in changes how people invest in the same place that they live. So I think it's a fantastic thing because we want people to come out of the shadows and we want them to be positive contributors to our America. And you can't do that while simultaneously telling them you're not good enough. You can't have it both ways. You will never shame a person to a higher level of behavior. Never.
And that's why people keep people from trying from voting.
Absolutely.
Yes,
That is
because
a
that keeps
control
it-
thing.
It's a control thing.
So-
So we know that this bill will affect disproportionately African American males in particular because they're the ones who are locked up. Do you think that you should that there should be some sort of movement to ensure that they actually go and register and get engaged?
Well, I think that'll be the continuation of this election. Because this isn't going to stop because this is just preparation for 2020.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything must continue. We can't slow down. We still have to continue to register people to vote. We still have to continue to educate so that people know why they need to vote or think about what they're getting ready to do.
Raise money for candidates.
How to pay attention to, we're going to have boo-goo Democrats coming out the woodwork.
And as you
So
said
we've got
before,
to make decisions.
people like Stacey Abrams and others that we think, well, the election's over, she's just got to deal with that legal thing, but that legal thing costs
Money.
Money.
Right, right.
and that has to be raised. Let's talk to David in Virginia Beach. Hi, David. You're on the air.
Yeah, I teach at a community college and first and second semester English. And the night before the election, I asked him to do a little in-class piece. Are they going to vote, and why or why not? And I don't care what they said, but I look at the quality of writing. But I was surprised that half of them did not intend to vote.
Did they
And
say why?
afterward- Well, yes, I asked them why, and most of them did not know the candidates, but more surprisingly, they thought their vote didn't matter. And they didn't mean that in a way that it would affect the election. They meant it wouldn't matter in their life.
Right.
So they're not my age. They didn't have the Vietnam War like I did, so it really mattered a lot who got elected. But,
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing, I'll leave with this. I asked them how many read the newspaper. This is a class of 25, and the result was zero, not a single person.
Yeah, I've had that experience, and I was teaching a journalism class. So
Go figure.
Now that's scary.
that's a whole nother discussion.
Thanks,
David,
David.
thank you so much for the call. But David says that his students feel that there's nothing that matters within their life. Allison, and I'll come to you, Carol.
I can see that because if it's not broken down, I mean, it's easier if something feels overwhelming to just, okay, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't affect me. And so when you don't know, no, this does affect you. These are taxes or these are whatever.
Exactly.
Then it's a true thing. It doesn't affect me, and I'm not gonna waste my time to go vote. It doesn't matter. It's not gonna make a difference, and it's just easier to. We want a reason to just not do
Not
the
be
right
engaged.
thing and not be engaged and not be responsible. Because the moment that I'm engaged, now I have to be responsible. I have to be accountable. I have to pay attention. I have to continue to educate myself. Like, there's a commitment, there's responsibility that's there.
Right.
That if I act like I don't know, I don't have to hold on to that.
It's interesting, Carol.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, and I think that's where those of us who are educators play a significant part, because when I get students who say, well, it doesn't matter to me, I said, so what is it you care about? Okay, the federal budget's going to be decided in October. Look at the line items. What is it here, and how is your congressman voting, and why is this, and what is the likelihood of this getting passed? Because it boils down to money. And you pay taxes, so show me the money. Show me where.
And I think for individuals who are just trying to make it every day and do the best they can for themselves and their families, that big picture and looking at that big budget, that's overwhelming because I'm looking at my little budget and I ain't got $500
Yeah, but
and
when
I got
you
to figure out.
see-
But in that, as the person who wants to be elected by them and to get them engaged, it is my responsibility to share with them that, yes, what I'm trying to do or what I want to do is make sure that your child gets the best education that they can get, or that you are able to pay to go to this college, or you will be reimbursed, or that we will have money to help you get there. Whatever it is that touches them, you have to figure that out. Because with gas prices going down, that impacts everybody.
And
So
perhaps, too, we need to tell them, you follow up. Once that person gets elected, don't drop the ball and say, oh, well, he's elected, she's elected, bye. You follow the House votes. You follow how they have proceeded to vote. And if they don't vote according to their promise, then we need to get in action and begin some more
Carol,
action.
I'm going to tell you. I don't do that myself.
You don't?
And I'm engaged. Okay?
She's an educator. She's speaking
I'm an educator too. I'm an educator too. I was that before I became this. But you do because that is your commitment.
Yeah.
And from that commitment of learning and understanding, then you share that with others who are wanting to learn. But I don't have time to do that. I follow the issues that are important to me. If you say you're going to do something about education, then I'm going to know that because you're going to know me. Because I make sure that every elected official...
But you do ask, how much is this going to cost?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But see, you guys are still having this conversation at a 20,000 foot level.
For people who are here.
For most people, all I care about, and it's the thing that I don't care how you feel about Trump, what he is masterful at is his ability to tap into how people feel about something. He doesn't care about what you think. He really doesn't care because he's not inciting intellectual engagement. What he's inciting is emotional engagement because emotions move people. The market's volatility is based on how safe people feel. The money might not have really changed that much, but if I feel unsafe, I will change the way that I invest or divest for that matter. If I feel like the immigrants are coming and they're going to take my jobs or they're going to be murdering my children, even though there is no fact base for that whatsoever, he knows that if I tap into something that's intrinsic in you, which is fear, I can motivate an action by virtue of a feeling. Because a change model really only takes you through, if you sow a thought, you reap a feeling. You sow a feeling, you reap an action. You sow an action, you reap a behavior. Sow a behavior, you reap character. You sow character, you reap identity. Who you are is based on how you think. But if I can make you feel, I can make you act, and that's what he does.
Carol?
And I agree. But even with most children, I remember 6 years old, when somebody say, this is what has to be done. Why? And then they come up with an answer and say, why? And so that why thing gets you into...
I hear what you're saying, Professor, but the thing is, that's the difference between CNN and Fox News. Fox News is only appealing to your feelings. So we're not even having a conversation at an 8th grade level. It's a 3rd grade level, and it's about 3rd grade feelings. But when you get to CNN, you're having a college conversation, so you're having a conversation with people who think through their decision making. They don't feel through their decision making. So that is why he keeps driving all of these people out to the polls, because he understands the psychology of humans. We are motivated by how we feel, and those aren't based on the facts. I deal with married couples all the day that bring us over feelings.
Hold on.
And there's no fact involved in it. When I'm fixing these conflicts for married folks, there was absolutely no fact in your feelings. It was just your feeling. And until we address how you felt, the story you told yourself, not the facts, that is when we start to deal with the conflict for real. So we've got to be honest about the fact that people are moved by their feelings. And if I don't feel how this affects me, I don't care. I do not care.
All right, Carol first and then Dawn.
No.
And Allison sitting there looking at you guys like, oh my gosh. Carol, go ahead.
I understand, but my feelings are also connected to my understanding of why. I have had situations even in my department where I've been told no, and I said, so why? Well, you see, this is the schedule, and if we do this, then we're going to have to do that. Okay, so why are we doing that? Why can't we do... Once you explain it, then I said, oh, okay, I didn't understand that. My feelings changed.
You're a thinker. You're cerebral. Some people aren't. Some people truly aren't.
Dawn.
Okay.
And then I'm going to add one other topic before we run out of time.
Okay, I just wanted to say he is a bully. Mm-hmm. And his bully is impacting how you feel. Mm-hmm. Because his followers don't care if they have a job or not.
They
said it on TV.
It's not
they said it on
fact.
TV.
There's no fact.
He's been there for 2 years. I still don't have a job. But it's all right. I'm still going to vote for him. Excuse me. I shouldn't have said it like that. But it's all right. And they still vote for him.
Absolutely
So
right. She's absolutely right.
But that doesn't make sense.
But that's because you're thinking it through, not feeling it through.
But you're not living in their journey.
Right.
You're
But
not
I
living
have
in.
been poor. I have not had things.
I'm
and
not
I
saying
still
that
question.
we're not saying that you haven't.
You know what, Carol?
But in your 73 beautiful years, happy birthday, girl. You have learned to engage. Okay,
Intellectually.
We're talking about individuals who are living. And just trying to live the best they can in the moment that they're in. Do they want to do better? Yes. Do they want to have a job?
Yeah.
Yes. Do they want
So
to be
they
able to drive a
ask
decent car?
how.
But
Yes.
they don't ask how.
But
That's their point.
And
is that they don't ask
they
how.
haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah.
I think because that they're still in the I'm going day to day. And we have to work with our
Okay.
families. And I mean, that's how you change the poverty level. That's how you change the educational level. And that's how you change the quality of work that you get out of a person that comes. And that's touching people.
Oh,
That's
I know
touching,
that.
so I'm sorry.
I guess that's why I throw out the question then, because it concerns, when I think about our system, you're right. There are people who react emotionally. There are people, but the people who are in charge are not the emotional ones. They are the thinking ones. And how much of that is our responsibility to really figure out exactly what it is we want versus just letting the thinkers tell us what to do?
Well, that goes back to those understanding and listening and talking. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to move a person to get to the thinking level.
Right.
Well, I mean, they'll get there. But
Maybe.
sometimes they get there through tragedy or through things that may not have impacted their lives if they responded in a different way. Because, when I don't know if I'm saying this right, and I'm probably not, but when people of color are engaged in harming each other, and then we are on the TV fussing and hollering and crying and mad at. Oftentimes, these are people that we've been interacting with all along, and then we turned on each other and we started hurting each other for whatever reason it might have been. But our emotions cloud then the thinking that you're trying to get to. And when you're emotional and doing certain things, you're not thinking
It
the way you
bypasses
would.
the logic. It
Right.
completely
So
bypasses
you
the
have,
logic.
You have gone from I'm here to way up here. And so everything in between, even trying to calm a person down, that takes a long time to even get to what caused you to get here in the first place. So we have a lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do. I want to get to this last topic before we run out of time, and that is the unfortunate tragedy yesterday of, again, another mass shooting.
The 307th.
We had, the 12 people, U.S. Marine Corps veteran opened fire. Over the past few weeks, you had the mass shooting of the Jewish synagogue in Pennsylvania, the pipe bombs mailed to prominent Democrats prior to the election, the 2 African Americans in Kentucky
At the
that
Kroger
were
store.
killed at the Kroger store, apparently just because they were black. What are we going to do about this violence in our country?
Absolutely
Continue
nothing.
to elect women.
Go ahead, say that again.
Continue to elect women.
Because that was going to be one of my other questions too. What is the difference this time? What having more women in charge? What do you think that's going to mean?
Diverse women. Diverse women. Because with Lucy McBath going in as a mother who has lost her child, she will speak a different language than just saying we need to, stop with the NRA money.
And her
because the
child was
NRA
shot
money is coming.
they were in the car, and the gentleman said their music was too loud.
Yeah.
Yes.
So so she's bringing a different emotion and a different passion to the things that she will want to do as a congresswoman. But I do think that there were, I think it's either 34 or 38 NRA-backed candidates that lost in this election. So that changes things, especially in the Senate. So that in the House, that changes things. So I think, in 2020, we get some more people in, then you begin to change the thought pattern so that you're able to move the bills through Congress. Because right now, even though the Democrats control the House, you still got the control of the Senate, and then you still might not get bills
I was
done.
going to say, do you think we're going to have total gridlock for the next 2 years?
Well, I'm hoping that we won't. They did it under President Obama, and that was spiteful, and we know that. But I think that because of how citizens responded in this election to show that, yes, we're a 50-50 kind of sort of divided country, that we got to do something together. we've got to figure out how to do something together.
Alvean, what do you think?
Whether or not we're going to have gridlock for the next 2 years, I think that really depends on people's understanding of what the long game is. If you play politics, yes, we're going to have gridlock for the next 2 years. If you make a decision that you're going to put people above politics, then no, we'll actually get some things passed. But ultimately, that's a leadership decision. Are you going to be focused on winning the next election? Are you going to be focused on changing America? And every leader has to make that decision on a personal level. And then at a party, the leadership of the party has to make the decision that that's what we're going to do. Because technically, we can do just that. We can investigate at the Democratic level. But if we go to impeachment, do understand that we may have the same backlash that the Republican Party had when they impeached President Clinton and their ratings dropped significantly. There are things that don't work for us, even though they may seem strategically sound in the moment. The feeling, like we said again,
I was going to say, we back to that emotion
could
again.
be the problem when it comes time to vote again. So we really have to make a decision that people have to be above party. And if we could commit to that in terms of our leadership, we would change the trajectory of our nation. And hopefully women will be part of that conversation more and more every single time.
Dawn, you want to add to that?
I'm just excited. I am. I mean, I'm excited about the possibilities because I think that if the House and the Senate work together, that bills will be signed.
I agree.
Because he will just sign it, just happy he signed something.
He likes his signature. He really likes it.
So he likes to do that. So I think if the House and the Senate can get together on things that will put people to work, that will improve our education system, then I do think that those things will happen. I don't think that that the House is going to move toward impeachment because that's a lot of work.
Now,
there's some other things that need to get
with
done.
the
Right.
changes with the wave
Right.
that just came, people. I think there's more of a commitment to try to figure out how to get things done. They'll do those things on the side, but I think they're just going to trickle and fall anyway. So
maybe this will be the chance where I've heard a lot of people say, particularly conservative African Americans, that when President Trump got in office, they felt that there were enough statesmen within the House of Representatives and the Senate to balance things out and actually come together.
There is the possibility.
That didn't happen the first 2 years, but maybe with this new group of folks who are coming together, that will happen. We got 45 seconds.
Okay, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
The
Go
balance
ahead.
of power is different, and so
Yes,
that
it
may
is.
be what will help to get to that point.
And we hope so. Last word, Allison.
I'm going to study up. Why? Y'all going to be so proud of me. I'm going to be the House and the Senate. Daggone it. I'm going to say stuff like municipal. I'm going to figure out where to put that. I'm going to say it. It's going to be right. I'm going to spell it right. You watch.
all three branches.
I'm a grown woman. I'm a grown black
judicial,
woman. There we go.
legislative. You tell
Keep
them,
going.
Allison.
I'm doing it. I'm doing
That's
it.
right.
You're going to ask me next time. I'm going to know.
Well, I like
Carol.
you, and I want more GAWs like you.
Ladies, as always, it is such a pleasure to have you all on Another View with your insight. Thank you so very much. And thank you so much for sharing your Friday afternoon with us. Hey, tell a friend about Another View, and they don't have to wait until Friday at noon to check us out. Just visit anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. We're on Facebook, so you can like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Next time on Another View, we're going to talk about health equity and take a deep dive into why there are differences in the quality of health and healthcare among different groups in our country. Our special guest is health equity expert Natalie Burke. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Janae Jackson answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.